What's going on, everybody? My name is Matt, and I'm joined with Coach. And together we are the FF Mediators. We're proud to be an affiliate of the Fantasy Face Off. And today we're going to be presenting some Dynasty buys and sells. And we're each going to go through and name a few players that we're looking at, give you some reasoning why, and let's just go ahead and jump into it. So, Coach, without further ado.
All right, so my first buy, which has been my boy for a while now, is Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a guy that everybody needs to get on. Sean Payton targeted him for a reason. You know, Sean Payton had decided early on that he was the guy he was going to go after in the draft, and he went hard for him and landed him. Everybody's talking about the other rookie quarterbacks right now, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels. They're the guys everybody's after. So now's a good time to sneak in and try to scoop up Bo Nix. I think in a Dynasty rookie draft we had not long ago, he went 201. That's a guy that you could target and get. Even there's times that Penix is getting more attention than he is. His quick game and the way he attacks the field has been impressive. Bo Nix in two preseason games was 23 for 30 with over 200 yards passing and no interceptions. Like, he's been extremely efficient, and I've been a fan of his since the beginning.
No doubt you've certainly been a fan since the start, and I think you're kind of approaching a spot where it might be the cheapest he is if he hits. I mean, if Nix turns out to be the quarterback you believe he is, and the offensive system that we've seen in New Orleans for several years in the past with Drew Brees, I mean, this could be the making for a dynasty team. I mean, you never know. It does make me question, does he have the weapons? So what are your thoughts on who he's going to be targeting and who is in that offense with him?
I think it's real. It's real when it comes to this year that he doesn't have a ton of weapons. I just think Sean Payton knows his stuff. Like, he made Russell Wilson relevant and actually made him a pretty dang serviceable quarterback last year in fantasy. And I really think moving forward, if Nix is as solid as I think he is, and they're going to build a team around him, and with each year he'll get a few more weapons to work with.
And you mentioned earlier too about how this was Sean Payton's guy, and there's something to be said for that, of the coach going to get the quarterback he wants. I mean, let's not forget we're several years out from when he last did this. His name was Patrick Mahomes. That's the guy he wanted. He said that's the quarterback in this draft, and he did it again this year. Now, maybe he's just hyping up the person he got stuck with because they picked later, but I'm going to try and take him at his word because, like you said, he's an offensive mind that's been a part of this game for a decent amount of time, and I expect big things.
Yeah, well, his quarterbacks just produce. I mean, it's just that simple. It doesn't matter who he has. At minimum, they're okay, which is impressive considering some of the guys he did work with after Drew Brees.
Yeah, I mean, survived with Teddy Bridgewater, survived with Taysom Hill. Those are all names that we're not going, yeah, that's who I want.
Right.
So, all right, well, then I'm going to jump into my first sell of the day, and it is going to be Chris Olave. Chris Olave is someone who I'm comfortable with having on my team, but I have concerns that he's hit his peak value, or at least for the next couple years. The New Orleans offense is something that I'm not exactly thrilled to be a part of. I think Olave is going to be in a capped role. We know what Derek Carr is. We know what Derek Carr can do, and it hasn't equated to being elite fantasy production. What we know is that you can go and buy Olave for, say, a first and a second, somewhere in that range. Maybe it's at a premium right now since the season's about to start. It's closer to 2 firsts. Whatever it is, it just feels like it's too much for me. I'd rather have a lot of the names that are going around Chris Olave. So let's think about it in terms of this. Would you rather have the wide receiver 1 on a team with a probably poor offense? Or would you rather have the wide receiver 2 on an elite offense? And that makes me think of Devonta Smith. That makes me think of Jalen Waddle. Makes me think of T. Higgins. And those are all names that I want right now. And I'm also comfortable with when having the next few years. If New Orleans goes south this year, then we're going to be looking at probably a rookie quarterback stepping in with a new coach, more than likely too. And that's just something that I feel like isn't talked about enough, because Olave can have all the talent in the world. It doesn't make his situation perfect.
So is there no value in the guy who is the target? He's the one getting all the targets. I mean, I know there's Alvin Kamara, but other than that, I mean, this is the guy they're going to throw the ball to.
I think there is value in that. It's just a matter of who would you rather have on your fantasy team. Like, there's no doubt Olave is going to get the targets and he's going to have the volume to sustain what he can do, but I think it's just capped how far that will go. If we're talking about it in the will Chris Olave finish as top 12, the answer to me is maybe. When you go higher than that, like say, can he finish top 3? The answer to me is absolutely not. And when you look at the names around him, where you're not having to add much to go from Olave to Garrett Wilson, there's some people who view them very, very similarly. And I'll ask you the question, do you think Garrett Wilson could finish as a top 3 wide receiver?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I
for
do
sure.
too. And I would rather have Garrett Wilson. He's tied to a better quarterback. Now, there's some question marks there. I won't deny that. But when I'm looking at the bigger picture, this just feels like an asset that's been underperforming for the last few years, and there's no reason to feel a change. It's almost identical to how a lot of people feel about London, where it's year 4 of London, and we're like, well, does he really have the talent? Well, at least circumstances for London have changed this year. He's added another quarterback that's better than anything he's had in the past. That's not happening for Olave. It's the same, if not worse. Now, the one thing you could argue is maybe that the injury to Derek Carr that he suffered at the beginning of the year was an impact on that. I don't know. But at this point in time, I think I'm selling Olave.
Well, and the concern is somewhat not just the offense around him, but also the guy calling the plays. You know, Dennis Allen's a defensive guy. He doesn't really want to really look to have any high-powered offenses and things like that. He wants to play defense and run the football a little more. And I mean, I know that's a concern, but Olave's got some talent. I don't know, man.
So let me ask you this. Do you think, who would you rather have this year, Olave or Tank Dell?
Oh, Tank Dell. I'm a Tank Dell guy, so that's a tough one though. But I mean, I
Okay.
get it.
Well, then let's make it harder. Olave or Nico Collins?
Ooh, that's a little harder. Well, maybe Nico Collins because he's attached to CJ Stroud,
And
right? Like,
that's where I land too, is I think, okay, well, he's attached to CJ Stroud. They're both young. But then I add on top of that if you trade them in Dynasty in a deal revolving around Chris Olave, you're getting the plus. Like, there's a world where you get Tank in a second, or Tank in more than just that. I mean, depending on how values are and what the league settings are, it can change a lot of things. But I would rather have those guys with the plus.
okay, well, let me ask you this: in the next 3 years, who would you rather have, Olave or Michael Pittman?
Oh, I think that one is probably Olave for more reasons we'll get into later. But for right now, I view Michael Pittman as a really good wide receiver, but it's the same argument that we're doing with Derek Carr. Is I just feel like the offense is
Yeah.
capped.
Well, I mean, I mentioned Michael Pittman because he had a good year last year, simply because he was the only guy. So, I
Mhm.
mean, with Minshew playing quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that Olave will be good for fantasy. I just don't think that he's gonna maintain the value that he's going at. And I
Hmm.
think you could be in for disappointment. Because the other thing is what happens if everything goes south for New Orleans this year? Let's say Atlanta runs the division and New Orleans is like, all right, we got to retool, reset, new coach, new quarterback. Are you going to go out there and run Chris Olave around like crazy? Probably not. You're probably going to just be like, well, let's figure out what's going on and then kind of reevaluate things later.
Yeah, I get it, and he's worth a lot in the dynasty world right now.
He is. And again, for me, it just comes down to who do I feel has the safer floor. And I really like the names that are around Olave. And I love the fact that I can get more on top of the deal.
Yeah, totally.
So kick us off with your next one there, Coach.
All right, so my next guy is Jayden Reed. I'm a big buy Jayden Reed guy right now. Jayden Reed's in a crowded wide receiver room. That makes him cheaper than some. Matt LaFleur loves Jayden Reed. I mean, he refers to him as a war daddy. Like, that's the guy he wants to get the ball to. Jayden Reed scored 10 touchdowns as a rookie. Like, I really think it's possible he equals that or more this year, simply because the Packers go out of their way to get him the football. Like, they do everything they possibly can, whether it's jet sweeps or screens or anything they can to get the ball in his hands and let him work. I just really believe his ceiling is extremely high, and he'll only get better.
So you mentioned the screens, and the RPO game is massive right now. Everyone's trying to add it into their arsenal. Do you view those touches as what often get called manufactured or extensions of the run game? Do you view those negative?
No, I mean, I think that's positive. I mean, they may not throw the ball downfield to him as much. I mean, he generally works out of the slot a lot. His win rate is really high on other routes, especially when it comes to comebacks and digs. His win rate's super high. But when it comes down to it, it's sort of similar to Deebo Samuel. Now, they're not handing him the ball out of the backfield necessarily like they do Deebo, but when you've got a guy that's that talented, you just find a way to give him the football. And every chance he gets to touch it's another chance for him to score a touchdown and increase your point output.
Yeah, and he was really efficient, and like you said, he's the war daddy, and that's someone that you want to put the ball in their hands, and he's going to be given a lot of responsibility. And what do we make of the running back room right now? I mean, they signed Jacobs, but AJ Dillon's out. Marshawn Lloyd has been out. We're left with Emmanuel Wilson, and I just wonder, is there an opportunity for Jayden Reed to take some of that missing volume right there? Because the Packers have traditionally always ran around with two running backs. And, Jacobs has been known to miss some time in his career too. So there might be opportunities for Jayden Reed. I'm not saying to take it out of the backfield like Deebo by any means, but I do think there's the extensions of the run play, the RPO game, the bubble screens, like whatever we can do to put the ball in a playmaker's hand. I think the Packers are going to do, because LaFleur can flat coach.
Boy, he really can coach, and Jordan Love can play quarterback too, so that helps. I know if you've got him, if someone in your league has him besides you, that person's probably is a little bit concerned about all the names that are in that wide receiver room and who's going to be the one. But for me, I think that's Jayden Reed. And I think this is a chance you can capitalize and go get him for a little cheaper than you'll be able to later on in the season.
Completely agree. I mean, his value right now is floating somewhere around a late first. Some even have him below a first. And part of that is because, like you said, it's a crowded wide receiver room. If you ask 100 people to rank the 4 Packers wide receivers, it's probably going to be split on who they think is the wide receiver 1. I mean, everyone's all over the place. There's conviction. With each player, you can make the case, make the argument, and whoever you believe in, go get them, because you believe in them. That's what matters. But I know you believe in Reed. Myself, I also believe in Reed. I think Reed is the one of this offense. I think he's the one that I want to have on my team, especially now at his cost, because if he hits, that value is going to skyrocket a lot higher, because Love's value has doubled in the last 2 years. I mean,
and look, I'm a Bears fan, so I want the Packers to struggle as much as possible, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen with Jordan Love and Jayden Reed on the field.
That's a good football team. So let me ask you a couple questions then. So, would you rather have Jayden Reed or Jordan Addison?
Oh, Jayden Reed, no doubt.
I agree. Jayden Reed or Rashee Rice?
I think Jayden Reed, only because Patrick Mahomes really spreads the ball around. Of course, Rashee Rice has a possible suspension looming for this year, but even Dynasty down the road, I think Jayden Reed is a guy I want to have. Although I would love to have Rashee Rice also.
Yeah, I'd take Rice on my team too, but I tend to agree with you there. I'll take Jayden Reed. Last one then. How about Zay Flowers? Jayden Reed or Zay Flowers?
Oh, give me Jayden Reed. Zay Flowers is a solid option also, but I still believe in Jayden Reed's ability to get in the end zone more than anything else.
Completely agree. I think Zay Flowers is somewhat a fool's gold. I think he's good, but I don't think he's great. And we know who's going to be scoring points there, and it's going to be Lamar, it's going to be Derrick Henry, and it's going to be Mark Andrews. And Zay Flowers is just not someone that I want to rely on, especially if I'm viewing him as my wide receiver 2 on my team. I don't want to be in that situation.
Right, and I'm not going to pay the price it would take to go get him.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
All right, well then let's move on. I'll move into my next sell, which I said more about this later. So this is kind of a hot take here. So hear us out. Let me tell my side, and I'm going to say sell Anthony Richardson.
Oh gosh.
Now this is a big one, y'all. This is a big one. We have been known as Anthony Richardson haters for quite some time, and I'd like to clear that up a little bit. It's not that we don't recognize the fantasy talent, because we're both the first to admit that, man, if you can rush the ball into your quarterback, sky is the limit. It really is. But watching Anthony Richardson, I have major concerns about his decision making and his ability to throw the ball. And, you and I talk all the time about how a playoff team has to have some semblance of a passing game. And they have one that I think is shaky at best. Richardson is an unproven passer. He's got limited experience in college. I mean, it's the opposite of what your take is with Bo Nix. Bo Nix had 55 games in his college
Oh yeah.
career? Richardson
Oh
has
yeah.
like 12. I just view that caution should be exercised, because if he doesn't hit, then we're talking about a massive bust, especially for teams that went and traded for him. I mean, his value is somewhere around 2 to 3 firsts, depending on your league. And that's a price I'm not paying. I'd rather have other names that are safer, that I know will at least have value for the next few years, because we know these things change fast with young quarterbacks. I mean, look at Justin Fields. Would you want Justin Fields on your roster right now? It's kind of scary. It's dicey. Yeah, the Bears fan is saying, no, we don't want that. And, we're also only, 3 years removed from when Trey Lance was worth 3 firsts, and he hadn't even played a down.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's a third on a good day. So I just think that there's a world where the value has hit too high on Richardson, where I'm willing to cash out now and go get a big name quarterback and a first on top of that. That's fine with me. I'm all for that. Or go get a quarterback and a wide receiver, because there's a world where this doesn't hit, man.
Yeah, and there was a time when people thought Justin Fields was going to break fantasy too. I mean, and people were paying a ton to have him on their team, and at the end of the day, he just was not a great quarterback. Like, if he was playing quarterback and he was Pittsburgh's starter this year, he would probably be relevant because of his ability to run the ball. Like, I understand that. That makes somebody fantasy relevant for sure. But if you're not a good quarterback, then people are ultimately, they're not going to play you. And sometimes when you watch Anthony Richardson play, it's like he doesn't see the field at times. He gets a little nervous and he'll just check it down, which is some of the same things I watch Fields do at times. And then he looks down the field. Next thing you know, there's a turnover. I mean, we were talking about a guy that Indianapolis didn't trust to throw more than 15 passes 2 out of the 4 games he played in last year. I think Matt's right. Like, we're not saying he's going to be bad. He may be amazing. But we're just saying pump the brakes on this guy a little bit. Like, ease up. His value is so high.
And if you want to hold him right now, then that's fine too. I get the, why sell? But I just see when someone hits that high of a value, I have a hard time not moving them, especially when I don't have conviction myself. So if I'm sitting at a team where I feel like I can win, or, he's my QB3, then I'll run with it and just see what happens maybe. But I'm not in any of those situations personally. And so if I was, I would be moving them, because I just think the value's too high. I'm going to take advantage of that because people will pay right now.
Well, and it sort of feels like one of those things where he's going to be amazing fantasy producer or really bad. Like, it doesn't feel like one of those things where he's going to be somewhere in the middle for the next 3 to 5 years. You know what I mean?
And that's a good point, because I think part of that correlates with the lack of ability to pass the ball. So he'll be mediocre if he can rush the ball for 70 yards and, have 170 passing yards and 2 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his fantasy day won't kill you. But we know that NFL teams aren't watching for fantasy box scores. They're looking for wins and losses, and they're looking to see if you can stuff the stat sheet with things that matter. And his rushing ability, if you're going to have a rushing quarterback like that, you kind of have to commit to it like the Ravens do. Like they commit to the rushing attack with the quarterback. And I don't think that the Colts are going to be able to kind of live on that fence like the Bears tried to do with Justin Fields.
Well, yeah, and the other question is, can you remain healthy during that time? Last year he did it in 4 games and couldn't survive after that. So that's another question. But it really comes back to his value is super high, and you can get a king's ransom for him and get a guy that's proven if you want to that can help you go win a title right now because everybody wants Anthony Richardson. Now's the time to look elsewhere if you're trying to win. That's what I think.
Yeah, and to give credit to what you're saying too, let's look at the names that are around that. Would you rather have Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I've been a proven Kyler Murray questioner, but I think he's more proven than Anthony Richardson. I think he is, and I would think I would rather have Kyler Murray.
Okay, Anthony Richardson or Herbert?
That's a tougher one for me at times because Herbert's offense now is going to be, who knows? We know Harbaugh wants to run the ball. We also know Harbaugh wins games. And Herbert's proven to be a stud at times. So, that's a tough one, but I would probably lean Herbert just on this proven ability.
I take Herbert there too. And I was going to throw another one. It's easy. Richardson or Lamar?
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah,
give me easy. Lamar all day.
It's Lamar. Yeah. And I say that to kind of point out the fact that in Dynasty, they're not that far apart in value. Like there's a world where you can get a swap or you can add something small and come back with Lamar. And I would feel way better with Lamar than I would with Anthony Richardson.
Well, Lamar's been winning fantasy leagues for years now and still has 3 or so more years to go at least, you would think.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we'll kick us off, Coach, with your next one.
All right. This might be my first sell. I'm selling Keenan Allen, mostly because it's now or never. Like Keenan Allen has been a dynasty stud for years and years and years now. The guy just catches a ton of balls. But you better trade him now because by weeks 5, 6, 7, Rome Odunze is going to be a wide receiver 2 in Chicago. And it comes back to the point that it's now or never, right? Because later on in the year, you won't be able to get anything for him, whereas right now, you might be able to get a second. So if you think your team is rebuilding at all, you need to move Keenan Allen today. The sooner the better. You can probably get that second-round pick for him right now. But once he slides into the wide receiver 3 role and he's not catching 100 passes a year again, then it's going to be too late, and you'll be praying you can get a 3rd or a 4th then for an older guy that nobody's going to want anymore. So it's one of those things where the dude can play, and he's been awesome. But later on in the year, when his role's not the same as it has been in LA, where he was the guy for all those years, then his value is going to go down further. So you better move him now.
Yeah, I think there's a world where he's relevant for the first half of the season more than you might want to say. I know you're the Bears fan and you really are excited for Odunze. Rightfully so. He looks like he's the real deal. But you're spot on by saying this is probably your last chance because we're not far from where he enters that range of where it's Julio's last dance around the league. And who wanted Julio Jones on their roster? Not me. You couldn't move him if you wanted to. And there's a world where a 3rd right now for Keenan Allen feels okay if I'm rebuilding. Would I want a 2nd? Absolutely. And if I'm a contending team, am I willing to pay a 2nd for Keenan Allen? Maybe. You could maybe talk me into doing that. But if I'm in any shape that's rebuilding, I'm moving him. He's getting off the roster because you said he's 32 or 31.
Yeah. Right.
That's just too far from me. And the names that you can get around him, now it might be harder because you're having to deal with a team who probably needs to be competing, probably needs some reason to want a bigger name wide receiver that's a vet. But you could go and check in on Pop Douglas, and that's a name I'd rather have. You can go and check in on Shaheed. Would you rather have Shaheed or Keenan Allen?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I still would hang on to Keenan Allen if I'm a contender. If not, then I'm gonna move on to the younger Shaheed. Now, as a Bears fan, look, I'm ecstatic to have Keenan Allen. I am, but as a dynasty owner, not so much. Because because of the age and where his production is going to end up. But right now, his value is still relatively decent because of everything he did in LA. So I just feel like you better get off of him right now.
Let me ask you this then. And this is gross, so I apologize ahead of time. Would you rather have Keenan Allen or Treylon Burks in a fourth?
Man, I'm still keeping Keenan Allen, I think.
So I think I might be on the Burks side. Maybe that's crazy, but that's where I'll fall. Well, let's stick with the same team then. Kind of the same issues. Would you rather have D-Hop or Keenan Allen?
I don't know. Flip a coin, right?
Exactly. I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the answer? Is D-Hop the one in a probably worse offense? I guess we could say they're probably worse. Or would you rather have maybe the three in a better offense?
Right. No, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, honestly, I'd be trying to get rid of both of those guys if I'm rebuilding at all,
Absolutely.
even a little bit. If I'm middle of the pack, you got to get rid of them now.
Absolutely. So I think you're spot on with it being your last chance to probably move those guys. So
Yeah.
let's move on and let's jump into my one and only buy of the day. And this will come to no surprise to you, probably some of our followers. It's Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been my biggest buy of the offseason. I have tried to get every possible share I can of this guy. I mean, his situation.
That's an understatement.
You're not wrong. That is an understatement. His situation is just set up for success, man. Like, I think the offense has talent everywhere. He was just re-signed to a massive contract. Last year, was it a down slip for him from the top 10 season? Yes, obviously it was. But he had so many injuries, man. So many. He had a banged up ankle, a shoulder, a concussion, a knee, like you name it, it went wrong with him. It was not a great season. But let's not forget, prior to him getting hurt, they were on fire. That team was on freaking fire, man. And when I look at the weapons in Jacksonville, that's a piece of pie I want. Between Brian Thomas, who we're both pretty high on, he seems like a wide receiver who's going to have the ability to give them the deep ball threat that they kind of really haven't had. Christian Kirk is steady as they come. He is perfect in that offense. And then when you add in who might be and should be on this list, Evan Ingram. If you're a contending team, that is a tight end you should want. I mean, he's going to have 100.
Go get that guy.
Yeah, he's going to have 120 targets plus. I mean, he's a machine. And then they have a running game and a solid offensive line. Jacksonville's just it's just a team that I want to be a part of. And has Trevor disappointed from his proclaimed prestige when he came into the league of being the best prospect since Luck? Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit. But let's not deny that he's been a solid quarterback. I'm tired of seeing the comparisons to Daniel Jones or Gardner Minshew or whoever you want to do because they're so skewed. Like, that first year was awful for him for so many different reasons beyond just him.
Hey, Daniel Jones had a good season too,
You're not wrong. Daniel Jones had one good year. You're not wrong. He was a stud that year, and I knew a buyer at the time. So I just think that when looking at Jacksonville and seeing what they can do on offense, I want Trevor Lawrence on my team because I think he's the ideal super flex quarterback. If he can be my QB2 on my team, I'm thrilled.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I got two comparisons. Let me ask.
Okay.
Would you rather have Jordan Love or Trevor Lawrence?
That's tough. And I think I'm gonna stick with Trevor because I think he's got the rushing upside that Love doesn't really run the ball like that. Trevor he's sneaky athletic. He can run the ball. I think that the Jags might have bigger star power whereas the Packers are probably a deeper group. But for me, it's Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's close. I mean, I can see either side of that. Jordan Love really did it 1 year, really only half a year, if we're going to be real honest. How about Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence?
You know, I really like Dak Prescott. I think he's criminally underrated year after year. He has been a fantasy producer. A lot of the Cowboys' problems come from not Dak Prescott. I'll say it. But in this situation, I'm going to take the youth. I'm going to take again, the better offense. I think the Cowboys have the better offensive player or the best offensive player in CD. But outside of that, that offense just doesn't really have anything. And the Jags have one of everything. And that's something that I'd rather be attached to.
Okay, one more. I got one more. Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence?
That's a good one because then we start to hit all right, well, how much does rushing impact my evaluation or, adding a player to my team? So I think there's some worlds where Kyler Murray would be ranked higher than Trevor Lawrence. But if there's no sort of rushing bonus or it's 6-point passing touchdowns, like it's kind of a coin flip. That's a tough one. I think I'll go with Kyler in the long run.
Okay, see, I would go Trevor Lawrence actually there, but
really, that surprises me actually. So,
and I've been a Trevor Lawrence. I've been down on Trevor. So
you have. We have disagreed about this for a long time. So let me ask you a few then. Would you rather have Trevor Lawrence or Brock Purdy?
Ooh, I think I'd rather have Brock Purdy, and I'm just going off. Some of that's offensive scheme, talent around him, proven talent around him, and proven offensive genius making the play calls too.
Yeah. Coaching is a big one in that. I think I lean Trevor over Brock Purdy, but I think they're pretty close. All right, here's one for you: Trevor or Tua?
See, I would probably lean Trevor, even though I'm a Tua believer and I love his offense and I love the talent around him. His health terrifies me. I mean, I've had Tua and traded Tua a million times, so it's a tough one. I'm going Trevor on health alone.
That's fair, and I don't think there's a crazy world for someone to have Tua above Trevor. I mean, again, for us, when we've discussed this, health is a major proponent of where we fall on Tua. So
right, absolutely.
And you've kind of shifted on that a little bit to your credit. I mean, he's played well, no denying that.
Yeah, I've been all over the place with Tua. I mean, honestly, so.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our dynasty buys and sells. So just to recap, Coach is saying buy Jayden Reed, buy Bo Nix, and sell Keenan Allen. And I am saying sell Chris Olave, Anthony Richardson, and buy Trevor Lawrence. Before we get out of here, Coach, let's fall into our weekly waiver review and go check the waiver wire and see if there's any names out there that we need to be looking at in dynasty leagues. Obviously, this is dependent on format for availability and bench spots, but any names sticking out to you, Coach?
Well, there's not a ton available out there in Dynasty right now. The thing about Dynasty is there's so many roster spots. A lot of them get filled up. So, I mean, I go deep dives constantly anyway. I try to add nonstop. You fill your taxi up and you add players just to see what sticks, Justin Watson jumps out at me. I think he's only rostered in like 10% of leagues. Well, the Chiefs, Hollywood Brown's out. Rashee Rice could be looking at a suspension any day now. You never know. Watson is a dude that has scored a couple touchdowns a game at random when you least expect it. So he could be a guy that you just sit on your bench and see what happens. That's possible.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Rice suspension. Will it come this year? I don't think it will, but will one come in the future? Probably so, but I don't know. There's a lot of speculation around that, but you're not wrong. And either way, Hollywood's out. So that's someone we're subtracting from that offense. And Watson's been a known producer in that offense.
Right. And Patrick Mahomes spreads it around. So.
And we mentioned earlier about the Packers running back room. With the signing of Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon is now out with injury. And then we're dealing with Marshawn Lloyd, who's been injured. I did see he was back at practice, I believe. So that's good news for the Packers. Good news for managers there who drafted Marshawn Lloyd in rookie drafts. But a name to add is Emmanuel Wilson. He might be the handcuff. He might be the 3. I don't know. Either way, he's 59% rostered, and he should be on someone's team.
Well, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, he's the handcuff right now. You got to try to see what happens. Jacobs has gotten hurt in the past. Who knows what's going to happen with Lloyd? That's totally possible. Another guy that I saw, Samaje Perine. Like, he's available in like 49% of leagues, especially with news this week that the Chiefs made a little bit of a run at Josh Jacobs. Like, that might say, well, maybe Pacheco's not just someone only the guy we're going to give the ball to. They're looking at other options to help out in the backfield. So, there's a world where Samaje Perine helps the Chiefs win some games this year. So I would totally stash him if I could.
You mentioned Perine, that signing, and also the Chiefs who attempted to sign Josh Jacobs. What does that tell you about Pacheco?
That's a good question, because he was a guy both of us have been trying to get in drafts. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I just think Andy Reid's going to spread it around. Ultimately, he's done that in the backfield in the past, and he's not going to put a heavy workload on one guy. And I think Samaje Perine was signed for a reason.
Yeah, whoever the name is, the history of the Chiefs, whether it was Jerick McKinnon, someone steps in and takes some sort of volume, because they just constantly are keeping you guessing, where's the ball going? The Chiefs are great at doing that. And here's some more names to watch for. I'm going to throw Johnny Munt out there. It's not a fun one to go and make a claim on, but if we're going to have Hawkinson on the PUP list to start the year for the Vikings, might as well just see what's there. You never know. There could be chemistry with Sam Darnold. I don't know, but he's only rostered in 14% of leagues. So there's a possibility of having a tight end with some real playing time. And then also Vele from the Broncos, the wide receiver. He made the team. We talked about him in the preseason some. Made a couple big plays, and he ended up making that team.
Yeah, that's definitely feasible. This is the point where you're just trying to throw a dart and hope you hit something. If you don't, you don't. It doesn't matter. They're not taking up a valuable spot on your roster or anything like that. We just think it's important. It's important to be fluid when you're playing Dynasty football. Next thing you know, you pick up a waiver ad and his name's Puka Nacua, and your team's all of a sudden competitive for the next 7 years.
I know a manager who did that. He's talking right here. His name's Coach. So I think you're spot on in saying that you just don't know what's going to happen. Vele's 32% rostered in sleeper leagues. And that's someone that I'm keeping an eye on, because I don't necessarily have conviction on who's going to be the Broncos' future wide receiver. We know Sutton is Sutton, but is it Mims? Is it Troy Franklin? I don't know.
I personally think that, they cut Tim Patrick just so they could have Vele, it appears. So
that's a move. Patrick was a surprise cut to a lot of teams and a lot of people.
Right. Absolutely.
So, well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Please go give us a follow on X at the FF Mediators. Also have the YouTube pinned in there as well. Give Coach a follow, too, and we'll be available to answer any Dynasty questions, whether that's trades, commissioner questions, or even start sit. We're die-hard Dynasty managers. Like, this is what we want to do. This is what we love to do. So reach out to us, ask us your questions, give us your thoughts, and we're more than happy to help you out where we can.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all.